Hi, this is T with TeaQuilts, and I'm here with the Take 5 die again. I used it in a Christmas Stashbuster pattern that's already on my website. I'll leave a link in the top corner so you can click on it if you have missed that video. But this time I decided to add some sashing in between because this is my 4th time making the quilt and I'm a little bored with it. But I do want to still utilize the die. I think it's a great die. So I decided to add some sashing just to spruce it up a little bit, and there are a couple tricks to that. So I'm going to put the camera on the tripod and I'll be back with some instructions. So I'm back with my studio die that I can cut all of the pieces in one pass for each block. In addition to that, because this is a studio die, I can cut 10 fabrics at one time. So I'm making 20 blocks, so I'll cut this out twice using my fabrics that I have approximately cut into 14-inch squares. So I'm back now with my fabrics that I've cut, and then I've rearranged them a little bit just to give some variety in the piecing as I go. And instead of putting the 3 rows of squares at the bottom and this at the top, just like it is on the die blade, I opted to switch those 2 positions before sewing them together. So when my block is sewn together, it will actually look something like that. So what I did with the traditional block, I'll see if I can insert a photo in here so you can see the traditional block here as well. But I put these blocks together without any sashing in between. And with me putting sashing in between, that kind of threw the measurements off just a little bit. So instead of my block finishing 12 inches, it now finished 12.5. So I'm going to move these fabrics out and I'll show you how I added the sashing. So to start, I started with 2 4.5-inch squares, and then I wanted to put this 1-inch by 4.5-inch sashing piece in between these 2 blocks. So I sewed this to one side, pressed that seam open with my fingers, and then sewed this to the other side, and then pressed that seam open with my finger, and I pressed all the seams toward the 1-inch sashing. So then you'll end up with something that looks like this, with the 2 pieces sewn on either side of the sashing, and then you go to add your 8.5-inch square. The problem with that is that right here you can see where the square is now a 1/2 inch too small because I have this 1/2 inch sashing that I added in between. So what I do is I go in and I just take 1/4 of an inch off of both sides of this piece strip. And you can do that prior to sewing the blocks together, but then you'll have a rectangle that's 4.5 by 4.25, and you may get confused a little bit on which side gets sewn to the sashing strip. So I just opted to do it this way. So I cut off 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to line this up on my mat, and then I'm going to cut my other 1/4 inch by cutting actually 8 1/2 inches wide. It just gives me a double check to make sure that everything is matching up. So I have it on a line here, and then I count out 8.5, and then I just trim that off, and now I know that this is exactly 8.5 inches wide. So then I go and sew those 2 pieces together, and now this is how your block now looks. Now we need to work on the other side where we have the rectangle and the square, and we're going to sew a 1-inch by 4 1/2 inch sashing strip between those 2 pieces. And when you do that, you will have something that looks like that. And then in between these two sections, because we added a 1/2 inch, instead of adding a 12.5 inch piece, we're actually going to add a 13 by 1 inch strip and sew those in between the blocks. When you sew those 3 pieces together, you end back with the block that looks like this. So I think when I put these blocks together, I'm going to rotate them so that the points are diagonally, and then when I get over here, it'll be the opposite direction. So I'm going to go sew 4 blocks together, and then I will come back and show you what I mean. So this is how my blocks will look. I still have another row of blocks to add to the bottom. This is 16 of my 20 blocks that I've made, and I like the setting, and I think I'm going to actually add sashing in between the blocks. That's why I left a little space in between. It kind of really looks like a puzzle, and I think at that point you won't be able to tell where one block starts and another begins. So I'm really excited about this project. I hope you'll try it, and thanks for watching. See you in my next video.